Hi friends, Kristen here. Whew. So today I want to talk a little bit about our need to look at our tendency to want to control everything in our environments, everything about ourselves, everything about our world. I think that one of the biggest medicines we're being invited to lean into right now is releasing control, or at least releasing the notion that we are in control. Let me say that again. I think one of the biggest invitations that we are being asked of right now is to release the notion or the belief that we are in control. I think that saying that is pretty scary to a lot of people. A lot of us, I think, maintain our sense of okayness by the amount of control that we're able to exert onto our environments, onto ourselves, and onto each other. I can say personally in my past that was one of the ways that I maintained my okayness, was I had control over my feelings. So I never felt a way that I didn't want to feel. And I'm putting that in air quotes because obviously I can't control my feelings and I'm going to feel any way that I feel. And I had this false sense of control over my feelings, which meant that I just repressed myself. I repressed all of my feelings and I repressed everything that needed to move. And so what that meant was that I turned into someone who was kind of volatile, right? Because I never was moving. I was like a dammed river, right? And so once the reservoir got too full, it broke the dam. And so I would have like explosive outbursts. I would like reach a point and then I would just like freak out about, usually it was something very little that would trigger me. But regardless, to say is I wasn't controlling my emotions. I was repressing my emotions so that they surfaced in very inappropriate moments and in ways that I ended up hurting people because the feelings that were mine weren't actually like meant to be directed at that person, and yet they ended up being the one who triggered me, and then everything came spilling out. And so I say all that to say that I have gained so much emotional freedom and so much more control, seemingly, over my beingness by letting myself feel. What that means is that some days I have really low days. Some days I have days where I'm just crying and I want to just nap. And that's okay, right? It is hard in our society because our society expects us to control ourselves. This is the other piece of it, right? So there's that interpersonal piece that I named, right? Trying to control our own feelings, which leads to emotional repression, which then leads to like really intense outbursts. The other piece is that our society is constantly trying to control everyone, right? And so we see this manifest as so much harm, right? When we talk about trying to control how we express our gender, when we talk about trying to control women, when we talk about trying to control people of color, exerting control over Black bodies, that leads to so much violence in this society. Or colonialism, right? Like one nation wanting to control the whole world and have say over like what is done everywhere. That kind of like imperialist kind of like cultural control, right? You will do it this way. It will be done like this, right? And even like eco-violence, right? Thinking that we can control our land, right? Like I know something that like has always really like bothered me and triggered me, and I think it is tied to this control piece, is our like meticulous lawn care, right? The like meticulous like exerting control over our physical environment. And to me, I feel like that is like one of the root causes of so much harm in this world, is that we feel entitled to control other people, our environment, ourselves, when in fact, we were never, ever, ever meant to be in control in the way that we perceive control. We are actually here to be caretakers, which is very different than being in control, right? I think that one of the biggest lessons in my life, as far as like what has like really changed how I show up, is the invitation to release control, to let go of the riverbank and flow with the current of life. I think that for many of us, that invitation scares the shit out of us, literally. As we're seeing actually right now, right? We're seeing the fear and the kind of like hyper needing to control everything that's kind of emerging out of this situation that puts many of us in a position where we don't have control. Maybe for the first time, like we're realizing that we don't have control. And so I think that like right now, the invitation really is to like, how do we be okay with not being in control? How do we still show up for ourselves, nurture ourselves, take care of ourselves, while we also accept that we are not in control? And I say all this not to like scare anyone, right? Because like I know personally that when I was getting those messages of releasing control, of letting go of the riverbank, flowing with the like flow of life, that was scary. That was super scary because I didn't know how I could be without being controlling. I didn't know how I could show up without trying to control everything. And so I think that this is a really good space for everyone to get really curious and notice the ways that we try to control everything and really recognize that that control is deeply, deeply rooted and connected with many of the forces of oppression that we're fighting against. Most of like racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, like all of the different forms of oppression really come out of like one group of people trying to exert control over another group of people and tell them how they're supposed to show up, how they're supposed to be, blah, 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 blah. None of that is right. We know that that's not right. And yet we still exert this hyper control over ourselves, telling us that, oh, I'm supposed to show up like this. I'm supposed to be like this. I'm supposed to be okay. But like the truth of the matter is that we can't be okay all the time. Also, sometimes it's exceptionally appropriate to not be okay. And that's okay. And often when we let ourselves feel the feelings and let them move, we actually feel better. So I say all this to say, I would love to support you on this journey. I offer coaching for folks who are really working to try to like step into their power, but not exert this hyper control. And I also like help folks with Reiki sessions. Energy healing can be a really nice way to kind of like relax our nervous systems. A lot of times that like hyper control leads to this like constriction in our body, which can be really, really unhealthy for us over the long run. So if you are interested in a Reiki session, which can really help to like calm the nervous system, that could be really helpful for you. I also do group work, and you can subscribe to my channel and see other activities, kind of like grounding activities that we can do to give ourselves a sense of peace without that peace coming from us exerting control over the world. There are so many ways that we can nurture ourselves and shift our perspective to be really uplifting and really just less harmful than this need that there seems to be in our society to always be in control. So I invite you today, like release control, let loose, like it's okay. It'll be okay. And honestly, if it doesn't feel okay, that's okay too. I invite you to just, in the way that feels best for you, experiment with how you could let go a little bit of control. I know that for me, letting go of control meant that I was able to deepen more into my relationships because I could actually show up for the people that I loved fully and accept them as who they were, instead of feeling like I needed to control them or control our relationship or control what would happen maybe in the future that we don't know anything about. Now, this is not to say that we are supposed to be like passive and like let everything like happen to us, but what this is meant as is an invitation to really get clear on what we do have control over, because so much of the things we think we have control over, we don't. And we don't pay attention to what we do have control over, which is our mindset, how we choose to view the world, and how we choose to like create the space that we inhabit, and how we choose to hold ourselves as we move through this messy thing called life. So if you're interested in learning ways to really like hold yourself, nurture yourself, get rooted, get grounded into your power, I would love to work with you. I would love that, because I think the more of us who let go of control and tap back in to the power within us, magic will be made. I love you all.